Round of applause for Andre. He's going to talk about our favorite topic.
Great.
Moolah, moolah, moolah.
My name is Andre. I'm a senior financial professional with World Financial Group. We are a division of Transamerica that's out in San Francisco area. I'm out of Chicagoland. Personally, that's where I live. We're very big into helping families make better financial choices. Financial literacy in terms of 6 steps to financial independence, how compound interest works, and the 3 traditional sources of retirement. So this right here from what you see is the cost of living back in 1963. Okay, this was pretty much my grandmother's time. Reason why I want to open this up and start off with it, as you can see here, look at the tuition of what Harvard was back in the day. It was $1,520 a year. That was pretty much one paycheck as of today could set you off for an entire year at Harvard. Look how much a movie ticket was. Look how much it cost for a brand new house. There were 3 traditional ways that people saved back in the day. It's called the three-legged stool. It's the traditional retirement model. At one point in time, there were no such thing as 401ks or IRAs. This was it. It was all about personal savings. It was all about company pensions. It was all about Social Security. So let me kind of dip into all 3 of these and kind of give you a little quick background. So long time ago, everyone had something called pension. Pension was still the traditional way of people, how they save for their retirement. It's a great way people set money aside. It was called a defined benefit plan. The corporations took care of the employee. Okay, you work for a company for so long, and then what ended up happening was you retire, and they were going to pay you a check for the rest of your life. Still to this day, a great program, but there's a problem. Fast forward 2020. Roughly, according to my last reading, roughly about 86% of the country right now does not have a pension. They have been phased out. In the early 80s came something called a 401k. So it took the responsibility away from the employer and put it to the employee. And on top of that, pensions are relatively very expensive because not only are you promising a paycheck for older individuals, but you're also promising a paycheck for people who are just now starting on the job. So that's a lot of money you're dishing out year by year. And then they had something called Social Security. Social Security, this is something that came about during the 1930s during FDR, okay, during the New Deal approach. This was another additional savings vehicle on top of pensions. This too was a great program they started back in the day. Still have it now. I'll get into that. But back then, my grandmother's time, the 60s and on down, every 40 people that were working, you have 1 person retiring. So that Social Security pool was pretty big. Fast forward 2020, that number has significantly shrunk, looking at roughly about every 2 people that are working, 1 person's retiring. So that Social Security pot is getting relatively very, very, very small. There have been, as you know, a lot of talks on Capitol Hill about Social Security. It's more likely not going to be the same thing. We'll see kind of what it ends up to be, but there's definitely going to be some changes. It's really underfunded right now. And then you got personal savings. Now, this is something as of right now, I think a lot of people in America are struggling with. Some of you probably know a little bit about this. My grandmother called it something called petty cash, or she called it something called the money box, the money in the shoe box. So she stashed money sometimes in the cupboard, sometimes under the mattress. And if you had hardwood floors in the house, there was maybe a crack in the hardwood floor. She put some money down in there. Money was always around. It wasn't always in the same place. So personal savings back then was a pretty big deal, and people saved. Well, if you fast forward 2020, before the pandemic, 78% of the country living check to check. Now that number is significantly a lot higher. A lot of people want instant gratification. People live for today and not really want to live for tomorrow. Really what you should do is live for today and also think about your tomorrow. So 78% of the country's check to check. So as you can see in this illustration, that three-legged stool traditional model of savings and retirement is kind of wobbly. It's coming apart. Pensions are really expensive, Social Security underfunded, and you have 78% of the country's really check to check. And really the reason for that, well, one is not to any fault of our own, okay, in terms of nobody signs up for a pandemic. No one signs up for world wars. No one signs up for economic catastrophic stuff like that. And we didn't sign up for that. But also some part of that has to do with financial education. Because if we were very well financially educated, we could handle some of the events like a pandemic. We can handle some of the events like 2007, 2008 financial crisis. A lot of that comes through financial concepts. This here is called compound interest. Now, this is one of the simplest concepts that you can actually learn about getting your money right. This one's called compound interest. It's called the Rule of 72. It was developed by a man by Albert Einstein, called it the eighth wonder of the world. And if you can understand this basic concept, you can understand pretty much how to double your money or say what's kind of going on with your finances and debt. So here's how it pretty much is explained. In this example, keeping things simple, let's say you have someone who's 29 years of age and they initially want to throw down, say, $10,000. I'm just throwing it out there based off what's in front. Now, how the rule states is 72 divided by an interest rate will tell you how long it takes for your money to double. According to this example, 72 into 1 is every 72 years. 72 into 1 to 1 is every 72 years. So that means every 72 years, your money is doubling. Well, in this case, in this example, if you have someone who's 29 years old, and let's say they initially, invest, say, $10,000, let's say in a bank, 72 years from now, the individual is 101 years of age, and that 10,000 is now doubled to 20,000. I think you all know that's kind of really a slow way to accumulate your assets. But what if at the same time, let's say you had a good friend of yours, and they invest at the same bank as you do, same age, same amount of money. And let's say, hypothetically, they got a 10%. Now, it's not guaranteed, but let's just say they did. That same 10,000, they started at the same age that you did, same time. By age 72, that money has compounded all the way up to $640,000. That's a $628,000 difference just really based off education. So the rule of thumb is when it comes to the rule of 72, the higher your interest, the faster your money doubles. The lower the interest, it moves, say, at a snail's pace. Also, as well, if you get with somebody who is a financial professional to teach you financial concepts, there's a good chance you possibly could get something like maybe a 7, 8, maybe say 9, 10% rate of return. It's not guaranteed, but it is possible. How can this actually work against you? Very simply, the average credit card is 18, 20%? Let's take that example. If you have a credit card that's 18%, 72 into 18 is every 4 years. So in that case, the principal on the debt of that card is doubling every 4 years if you're not paying it off in time. So that's an ouch situation of where the rule 72 is working against you. What you want to do is have this concept work for you. Now, here's another way of how an institution uses the rule 72. So let's go back to the bank example. In the bank, let's say you are that 29-year-old person, you initially invest, say, $10,000. Thank you for coming in the bank. We welcome you here at ABC Bank. Before you leave, we want to introduce you to this credit card. It's a great credit card, all the points, all the bells and whistles. And then like most people, you buy into it because you love the points and you love the benefits, what you get out of it. And every time you spend it, you got the points and you can go on a cruise, all that stuff. Well, there's a little something in there is called the interest. There's roughly, say, about 20% interest every time you use that card, you don't pay it off. If the institution is giving you 1% on your money in your savings and they're charging you 20%, let's just say, on the interest on the credit card, they're charging you 20 and giving you 1. Okay, well, what happens to the 19? What happens to the 19 is they're going to take that 19 and invest it for themselves. You don't get that 19. That's just how it's done. They take that difference and invest it pretty much on what you deposit, and it goes back out to the public. Okay, they take that 19, they work how they see fit. So that's how they pretty much use the compound interest effect. So what you want to do personally in this concept of Rule 72 is you want to use the compound interest effect so it works for you, not against you. So what you want to do is you want to get your low interest investments to high interest and get your high interest to low interest. Now that you might know one little concept, let's get more into the concept, Andre. I see the traditional ways that people saved back in the day. So how can I get my money right? What are kind of like the 1, 2, 3 steps and kind of how I do that? This here is the 6 steps to financial independence. If you follow these 6 steps, you will put yourself on a better financial map. I will tell you this, there's a difference between financial freedom and financial independence. Financial freedom is when you wake up in the morning and you got all the money in the world, you do what you want, when you want, you know the money's there. Financial independence is pretty much when you have enough money left over, discretionary income to pay your bills, no problem. You probably have a little bit of savings, 3 to 6 months, etc. So first, to get your finances right, you got to go your cash flow. You've got to do a budget. A budget deals with cash flow. In that cash flow, you got to take a look at what comes in, what goes out. Pretty much what goes out are the expenses, your debts, and then you got to look at your income. What you have left over is pretty much your cash flow. And within your budget, you can kind of subtract of some areas that can actually add to your savings. Then you want to do some debt management. In this debt management, we want to try to consolidate debt as much as we can. We want to try to eliminate. If you have any type of little bit of money coming in, what if I told you there was a way with the money that you have coming in, if you have consistent income, what if there's a way you can pay your debt off in half the time and you don't have to call a debt consolidation company? Now, that's a conversation for another time. Number 3, emergency fund. You should have roughly about 3 to 6 months on average. It's not exact, but it's just average. Obviously, more is better. In the case of the pandemic, we're in an emergency situation. Well, you want to have roughly about, the average is 3 to 6 months, but since we're in a pandemic, you want to definitely have more. If we weren't in a pandemic, stuff like maybe flat tire or need a new water heater, that stuff is roughly about $3, $6, maybe $1,000 to repair. You want to have that emergency fund money to help take care of those things. And proper protection. In any financial independence plan, you gotta have proper protection to protect a family against loss of income, to protect family assets. Okay, but if you're gone tomorrow, you don't want your spouse to handle all the financial matters of a house, and on the top of that, they have to worry about the personal loss. I've seen a lot of families when there's no proper protection that they're worrying about the financial loss and they're worried about the person that they personally lost at the same time. That person can go into some mental health challenges. I've seen it firsthand. Having proper financial protection, having your insurance in the right place. It may not bring back a life, but it sure can take care of your financial worries. So proper protection is huge when it comes to financial independence. Building wealth. What you want to do is outpace inflation as much as possible with the 401ks, the IRAs, etc. Now, here's another little money tip. There's something called the hidden tax. The hidden tax is called the inflation. Inflation is roughly about, give or take, let's say about 3%. If you're not above that 3%, your money's pretty much being eaten up by the hidden tax, which is inflation. So you want to get above that as much as possible. And lastly, what we want to do, we want to preserve wealth. That deals with wills. It deals with trust, reducing your taxation and building financial legacy. So if something should ever happen to you, you can actually pass along your assets to your family members and bypass probate. Now, I want to share with you really quick some matters when it comes to that. And I think this is very important. So here are some examples of people who did not have an estate plan. Remember this guy? Passed away really recently. He was a star of Black Panther, Mr. Chadwick Boseman. Guess what? Didn't have a proper estate plan. Didn't have it. Here's another gentleman I think everyone should be very familiar with. This is James Gandolfini. He's very popular for The Sopranos, lead actor in Sopranos. It was an HBO series. 80% of his estate was unprotected. 80%. So a good chunk of that, the state of New York, has held up in probate. And here's a famous one by Prince. Prince has a $300 million estate as of right now that's still being held in probate. And he passed away roughly around 2016. Until this day, his family has not really seen all of the assets of his estate. So I need to say this. When you have a proper estate plan, you avoid issues like these people have. Now, an estate plan is not for people with money. It's for everybody. If you have a home, you have a car, you have a little bit of jewelry, guess what? You have an estate. It's for middle-class families, and it's for people like these individuals who are high net worth. It's for everyone. But the name of the game is, with a proper will and with a proper estate, you can actually pass your assets to your family and really bypassing that probate. Well, let me show you something. So let's say you have a husband and wife, and they have a five-year-old child. They want to do well. They want to do right with this 5-year-old. They want to set him up for life. And they're like, honey, hey, let's do $150 a month for our child. They do about $150 a month, and they're saying to themselves, come hell or high water, we're going to constantly keep doing $150 a month. Now, this child pretty much is going to work, let's say, till 65 years of age. So they're 5 now, so that means they have 60 working years. They fund $150 a month for the child at all the way up to about, say, 25 years. And then 40 years from that point, the child takes over the $150 a month. If that child, let's say in that time frame, in those entire 60 years, starting at age 5, let's say they average out about an 8% rate of return in the program. I don't know. Let's just say an 8% rate of return. It's not guaranteed, but let's just say. In roughly about 60 years, here's what's going to happen with that $150 a month. That's a $2.6 million in savings for that little one. Thank you, Mom. Thank you, Dad, for making the right decision. But let me leave you with this. Most people don't have that right now. Most people, they start their working years at 35. There was no savings beforehand, and it's not the parents' fault. They just gave the child what they had at the time. Let's say the person's 35. They have no retirement, they have no savings, they don't have anything. They're just now starting to figure this stuff out. Oh my gosh, I just got a new job. I'm married. I just bought a new vehicle. It's time for me to get my savings right and get my long-term retirement right. Well, now this individual has 30 years to stop working. They're 35 now. Let's say they come to me and say, Andre, I want to set aside $150 a month. I want to retire at 65 and I want to have $1 million. What does that look like for me? Oh, okay, well, let's take a look at that. Well, $150 a month, that's somebody who's 35 with nothing going on. Let's say they did get a cumulative, like an average of 8% rate of return. That's a $225,000. There's a big difference from 60 years of saving versus now you got 30 years. What I'm trying to show you is time makes a difference. Take these concepts, and if you have any other questions, you can get in contact with me. Now, there's a little bit more to it, but I just kind of wanted to share with you the importance of saving and what it can actually do for you in the long run. If you want to get your money right, you got to make a decision, do a budget, and from there, okay, I have a blueprint where I want to go. I see I have some extra money here. My future's important. I need to talk to somebody. So that's me. It's Andre, World Financial Group, Transamerica Advisors. Again, if you all have questions, you can give me a call. We can take it from there for starters. All right? Thank you.